We'd like to call this meeting of the RTM Education Committee to order. And it occurs to us that you may not know everybody here, so I wonder if we could just go around and tell the Board of Ed and the administrators our names.
Curtis Butler.
Jan Grogan.
All right, Peter Marusha.
Karen Nickel.
Ann Reed.
Clara Sartori.
Barbara Thorne.
Sarah Newman.
Mrs. Diori.
Teresa Vogt. Sheila Sherwood.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. According to our...
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm Tara Ockman.
Okay, if you want to go and introduce yourselves, that's great too. You're Mike Feeney.
Director of Finance.
Elliot Landon, interim superintendent.
Hi, Susie DeSilva, Assistant Superintendent of Schools. Shirley Watt, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services and Special Education.
Mark Stein, Director of HR.
Michael Burke, board member.
Katie Stein, Board Member.
Duke Deneen, board member.
Krista McNamara, Board Member, former RTM Education.
That's right.
Jill Hammond, Board Member. Deborah Ritchie, Board Member.
Former chairman.
Dennis, you missed your seat up there?
CDSP.
Okay. Okay. According to our agenda, we have only one item this evening. We're going to discuss with the Board of Ed and the administration the committee's questions on the recommended 2019-2020 budget. So I understand that you all have prepared some answers, and I wonder, do you want to go over them like that, or?
So yeah, I thought we'd handle it much like we did the Board of Finance. We'll go one by one, and
Okay.
we kind of gave you the most succinct answer, but if there are follow-up questions that you want as we go through this, we're happy to answer
Okay.
them.
Would you like it, if we have questions about the answers, to have us sort of interrupt you, or you want to wait till the end?
No, why don't we go one by one?
Okay.
If there's something we can clarify or help answer on the fly, we're happy to.
Okay, great.
So the first was about a question you had about the budget book and about layout. So certainly the budget book is intended to be both transparent and user-friendly. It is a large budget. It's $100 million. Part of the question was best practice. If you look town to town, things vary greatly. Part of the reason for that is the state statute requires the Board of Education provide an itemized estimate. They don't actually require a budget. Now, we in Darien have always provided a full budget, and we always intend to, but the budget is large. Mr. Feeney does offer in the beginning of the season a budget book kind of primer course for anyone who wants to know how to look at the book or how to read the book. It is a lot of information, so we understand that. We do feel that it is transparent. It goes by responsibility center. We've made adjustments over the years based on public comment and board member comment on how to best align those RCs. The white pages in the back of the book are all grouped to show our object detail along with staffing levels over a 5-year period. And the 5-year capital plan rubric shows how we are prioritizing projects. And you can see there high, medium, low, code compliance, safe and healthy, safety and instructional needs. So I do think, we understand at times where people are like, well, I don't understand where that is. But I do think if you attend the primer in the beginning of the season and or you have questions throughout, let us know. There is no best practice. Really what is supposed to be provided is blocks, operational, personnel. We do every single line item, even though line item control only rests in the Board of Education. Teresa, did you?
Yeah, sure. So my suggestion would be is every year you're going to get certain questions, and every year we get these handouts at that Super Saturday meeting. I think it would be great, knowing that we're going to ask for this, if it's actually in the budget books that we already get, so that we can look at them when we're looking at the whole budget before we show up for Super Saturday and have our questions planned. Because we're going to ask the same questions every single year, be it about athletics and that breakdown, or even like the special, like what Shirley gave us for special education to answer a lot of our questions. I think a lot of that could have been in the budget book already, rather than us having to seek out the questions year after year after year.
So that's fine, and we take it under advisement. It's like we take lots of opinions in. I would say that you sometimes see things go cyclical. so year-over-year changes.
Yeah,
But
no,
I do think
I
it's
totally get that, but you know we're going to ask for the handout, and you give us the handout that day, so we don't really have a chance to look at it until the meeting is actually happening. It would be great if we got it proactively in the budget book, that we get in
So,
handout.
I mean, we can take it under consideration as we go forward.
Okay. Any other? Okay.
Okay. The next one. This is actually, all the other answers are rather easy. This is the toughest one because in some ways, it goes to an understanding of how we do this. So the 3-year actual comparisons, and Peter, I think if I watched the last meeting, this is where you were going. I know where you're going with it. To provide this analysis won't give you what you're looking for. What I think you're looking for is in our quarterly budget meetings where we do our transfers, it will show you where the transfers of money is happening. Just an aggregate change won't actually show you the where or the why. And so I think what you're getting at, what causes the shifts and why the shifts are.
And there are too many items, sorry to jump in, but there are too many items to really go back 3 years, and I didn't want to even compare it. I just wanted to see whether 2015, 16, we budgeted 91 and it ended up at 90 and a half. Is it within the ballpark, right? I wanted to sort of just see, is it close enough, right? Because we're discussing here, in this year, every year we discuss a lot of line items, but at the end of the day, 90 and a half, 93.3, 95.1. Where we close, this is the actuals. Where the approved budgets within $1 million or
Yeah,
not.
so you
That's really
will
what
see, so that's actually better because we can get you that. That actually you'll see in October. It's how much money we give back to the town. Because we can't go over our appropriation, and any money we have left over needs to go back to the town. We are not allowed to carry reserves year over year. So our October report, usually October, late September, we would show you how much. This year we were able to give back $700,000. There are other years where we've had to say we give back zero, we spend it, and other years where we've had to ask the town for money. And luckily that has not happened in quite some time. So now that we know a little bit, we could probably show you year over year. That would be an easier thing to get. So we'll get that. We'll get that to the committee. Enrollment. Why not include it in a section K-12 all students who live in Darien? So we can see how many. So part of that is self-reporting. Parents who go to private school, that's at their discretion to report to us. We're not really responsible.
No, I don't think the question is about private school. I think you guys are reading it wrong. The
Well,
question
that's
is really about who were we paying for? We're not paying for private school kids.
No, actually, I think the question, I think I asked this at the Super Saturday thing. What I was looking for is a comprehensive picture of how many kids live in Darien who might be eligible to use the schools, because when the parent may decide to stop using the private school, suddenly the person is on the doorstep. So do you have any idea what the outside number is?
Like how many are hanging out there?
Yeah.
I mean, the state has to make sure children are educated, but that's not really up to us. That would be self-reporting on the behalf of on parents who choose to send their kids out.
So there's no, like when there's a census, you would know,
The census would. The last census, though, was...
it was 10 years ago, right, but it's coming up again,
9
yeah.
years ago, we're almost due for it.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it would be interesting, it's just not really our responsibility. What we do try to track is the number of units coming into the town, and you'll see that with the developments going on. We have estimates, and we've also worked with an outside consulting group to try to estimate how many kids that might be bringing in.
Okay.
I think right now it's at 86 children based on Federal, Corvid, and Palmer.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I would say when they did Avalon, they gave us higher numbers, and we experienced lower numbers. Kensett,
We had
we've
lower
experienced
numbers.
really
Kensett was a problem,
differential.
yeah.
So it's the best kind of guess that consultant science looking at all the factors can, and then you have to look at the reality of it.
And homeschoolers do not have to report at all.
So
Unless-
your
right.
child is...
Oh, a child schooled at home, right.
Current. No,
Well,
that's-
that got
it's out
voted
of the
down.
law. It's out of the law.
They
17
dropped
years
that.
ago.
They did drop that from the proposal.
They dropped it.
Yeah. But I wonder, though, the state reports what percentage of children in Darien and other towns go to the public schools. And I think the numbers were like, 95% at elementary school, maybe 90% at middle, and 85. So where does that number come from if they don't know, if they can't, if the number of students in a private school cannot be reported, how does the state do that ratio?
So do you guys want to talk about how they come up with that number? I think they have to prove they're educating their child to the state.
Right, but I'm just saying, they
Doesn't mean
must,
that the district necessarily is tracking who's in private school.
no, but I'm just thinking there must be a base number for them to say, well, 95% of the kids in Darien go to the public schools. Well, somebody, where are the other 5? Who knows about them? I mean,
School profile, Susie, would that come up? In our
yeah,
The strategic school profile, that may be identified there. So for students that we are aware are attending private school, for example, maybe attending a magnet school in Stanford or something of the like, we do keep track of those students. We do keep track of homeschool children that, again, that we're aware of. As for children whose parents may opt to go to private school unless they were registered with us initially and then withdrawn, we would know about those students otherwise, no.
so that, okay, go ahead.
I've been operating under a possibly erroneous assumption that there's some transportation costs that Darien pays for those that are in private school. Is that correct or no?
No.
So there's
Not
zero.
necessarily. Okay, so let's make sure we're using our terms correctly.
So somebody who chooses to go to private school not due to a special education agreement, yeah.
No, they don't pay.
Okay,
No, they
that
don't.
was something that I
Did we in the past transport kids who lived in Darien to Pear Tree Point?
No.
Other towns transport, like Westport transports their kids to GFA as part of the law.
It's not the law.
No, yeah, it's not the law.
There is, I know what you're talking about. There are agreements in certain towns that allow for a transfer of cost of what you would have spent on transportation.
That's
of
what
a
I'm-
student. Otherwise, Darien does not currently.
Got it.
do that.
To go back to what Susie said, magnet schools are not private schools, they're public schools.
Correct. We pay.
Right, so if we have a kid who's at a magnet school in a different town, do we pay that town
Yes.
money to cover the cost of that child?
No, we do not.
Money doesn't follow the student. Money doesn't follow the student, which is one of the big educational issues that's being debated up in Hartford. Should the money follow the student? The money currently does not follow the student.
So in the case of, I just happen to know kids who went to the Brian McMahon International Studies High School. They still got a diploma from Darien, right?
Yes.
But we don't pay Brian McMahon anything?
No.
We don't, okay.
The state funds magnet schools.
Oh, I see, okay.
And this is one of
Okay.
the debates about
Okay.
school funding. The state funds Rogers, the state funds, I'm not entirely sure because the international school is connected with Brian McMahon, so I don't want to misspeak on
Right.
what the actual funding mechanism is there. So one of the debates up in Hartford is, should the money follow the school? Should the per pupil cost of a Darien student now attending a magnet school follow that student, and Darien is on the line for that per pupil student cost? At the moment, that's not the way funding works. The state funds magnet schools independently, and that's one of the debates. But how the legislator's going to
So
work
then
that
we
out.
do not fund because I've seen the AIT bus show up at Middlesex. We don't fund that bus either.
AIT, do we fund that? The magnet transport.
Okay?
Okay.
Sheila?
If students were to come from out of district to attend Fitch School, who pays for them?
Well, so that would be part of our deal. We would, those students would be tuitioning in, and so that would be part of the cost for them to attend. That would not be Darien, because that would be a placement by a town. That's not a magnet school.
Any other questions on this? Okay. Thank you. The next one, on the next page, personnel, page 15. This was a question about the split of the $1.83 million increase requested for personnel and to union and new and other non-contractual increases.
It's actually 1.675, I think we put the number, which was in the previous budget. Right, so it's 1.675.
All right. Instead of 1.83?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this gives you the example of where it is. Is there a follow-up to that? We settled out secretaries this year, paraprofessionals, the custodians, and then we have, upcoming, we have teachers in 2021. So we'll begin this summer on our teacher contract. But if anyone has follow-up on these are all the places that you can find that information as well.
You see that, Peter?
I do. So out of the 2.5% increase, I'm trying to figure out if we did not do the 3.62 increase in personnel, where would we be? Just nature of negotiating and stuff. Would it be close to 2%?
It's hard to hear.
2.5%.
So in general, when we approved of the teacher's contract. This year should have been about a 3.4% increase. The other unions are significantly less than that. So the secretary's union, custodians, and maintainers is around 2%.
Okay.
And so the 3.4 isn't 3.4 because since we adopted and negotiated that contract, people have changed. They've left. And depending on where we're actually hiring at the scale, lower than where they were previously.
But the agreed upon contractual increase.
Correct. It's 3.4.
Let me ask another way. The 3.62 increase in staffing that we tried to do, right, with the psychology stuff, it's about how much? And then what are we adding to the budget for? Ballpark, as a total?
Just for the psychologist. So they're budgeted at a salary of $70,000. Am I correct? And they'll fall into the
I don't
certified
care about
union.
the.
Yeah, so they're budgeted at $70,000, and they fall. But where we actually hire, and that's where you'll see like budget controls. One of the areas we'll use that for. We may hire someone who's fantastic at $55,000. We may hire someone who's fantastic at $85,000. Where their previous step is, will. That's why. So that's why really what we're doing is 18 months in advance. We're setting a budget, and again, it goes back to why you see transfers. Because when our actual staff is hired, when our actual staff is in place based on our section, you start to see transfers based on the realities. We're trying to plan for a student population 18 months before we know actually who's sitting in the classroom.
It might be good, just as an example, to go to a budget meeting and see the transfer sheets with all the information on them, because I think then it becomes very clear how you see that money might be, only the Board of Ed can transfer the money within the account, so you'll see that. Yeah, that's true, you can see it online too.
You can see the aggregate reports,
Right.
You can see each transfer for each quarter. Each budget meetings generally run only about a half an hour. So you can come there early, or you can watch it home at your leisure.
Okay. Any other questions here? One thing relating to the teacher contract, I actually just thought of this. I'm interested in censuses, I guess, because do you have an idea of how many teachers you have year to year who are veteran teachers, how many teachers who are new? Because that would affect, the amount of money that you're going to have to budget for in the, when you do the contract negotiations. Some years, in the past, people will say, well, we have a veteran staff. And then you'll see a couple of years after that, lots of retirements. And then you'll see a lot of young people coming in. So, and then there'll be certain kinds of leaves and stuff that are associated with a young staff versus an older staff. Do you have any sense of where you are now? You have a veteran staff? Do you have a young staff? Do you see a lot of movement there?
So we've done a lot of hiring. Marge, I can let you jump in. We've done a lot of hiring. I think the only thing we'd have to be careful about is, yes, they are new staff. That doesn't always mean that they're at the lowest step.
No,
But to your question, Marge, you want to talk about changing population?
Right, so we have hired a lot of new teachers. We will hire new teachers. We'd like to train them here. But as more and more shortage areas occur, where teacher shortage, we're going to have to hire people or try to hire people with experience. And in preparation for teacher negotiation, Mike prepares a teacher experience grid.
Oh, he does? Okay.
We'll
Okay.
have that around here.
Okay, good. Okay, the next question, you want to go on?
So is there a voucher system? So there's no voucher system in our teacher contract. And then there was a question of what prompts a teacher to cover another teacher's class. As the result of our last contract, teachers receive $30 for a class that is covered. That was a negotiated change. If not, we hire a substitute, often for the day. That's $100 a day, 110 now for the day, 100 for the day. The impact of teachers having to give up a planning period, no teacher wants to give up their planning period. Certainly, I think all teachers, plan and move around that as best they can. But when we need a sub, we hire a sub, and when we can have a teacher cover and it's more cost effective, we'll have teachers cover as a more cost effective measure.
Any comments about that? Yes.
Do teachers know ahead or volunteer ahead, or is it last minute we have to cover this class?
Do you guys want to talk about that?
We, where they know in advance, we hire a substitute. Where we don't know in advance, like somebody gets sick, reports sick in the morning, or has an emergency and has to leave, then the administrators reach out to teachers and say, who's available and willing to cover. that's the best we can do. Generally speaking, we are able to cover every absent class with a member of our staff if we don't have a substitute.
Does the high school or do the other schools have building substitutes who are there all the time?
There are some districts who try to hire permanent substitutes. In other words, they come in every day for a fixed sum. Generally speaking, that has not been very effective because those are people who have other interests. Some of them will get a job, and then all of a sudden they're not available. And it isn't every day that you need a substitute. So I think our methodology is probably the best from a productivity and fiscally responsible approach.
Do you still use interns? That you might have an intern working on the building, and you could call on that intern to be a sub. Do you do that?
Yes.
Okay. So, and you don't pay that person at all, right? Because they're already.
We pay a portion of their tuition.
Okay. Right.
They are out attending when they student teach.
Right. Okay.
So are you saying it's teacher choice to do this or not? If someone say, I need my planning time today?
It's volunteer. It's
Yeah,
volunteer.
it's volunteer. I think generally they want to make sure their class is covered, but it is a volunteer. School climate survey, which is another one being much talked about in Hartford at the moment. We did focus groups at each school this spring, and the schools created whole community goals around that. It was reported out in a Board of Education meeting. And so those focus groups, the goals, that's all part of the process for making sure that as we report on this, quite frankly, for us, we do report to the state, but for us, that we are making sure holistically inside our schools, we're doing as much as we can for students, for staff, and for teachers to feel good about all the time they're spending in school. So we feel pretty confident about that. Student activity accounts. This is one we love to talk about with you guys every year, so here we go. The student activity accounts are not operational accounts, so they are not found within this budget. Stipends are not paid out of student activity accounts, so we do not pay salaries. Those monies are supposed to go directly for student need. There is a reference under line 55 at the high school for other student activities, and that's something different. That is to support the China exchange, new freshman orientation, guest speakers, and school spirit, and things like that. But the student activities account is not. It is money put in for kids to be spent on kids and what they're doing. There was a question about the increases in the budget and why an increase of over $500,000. Of that 551 of that are staff increases, personnel increases. So I did watch a meeting, Peter, I think this was you again, but it was like, well, it can't only be 3,500, it's only 3,500. That is a shift in their budget that is not driven by contractual costs.
So the 551, these people are hired now in place, or is this estimate that will come in? And we think, because there's some increases, right? We have 9% increase for a person, we have 6% increase. Is this your best estimate, or these people are already hired?
So for the majority of them, the people are already hired. Where it wouldn't be is if there are certain vacancies that we know that would be filling in, we would make that adjustment. But you will see anywhere the ranges could be from 3% to 8 or 9%, as you basically say. And that's going to be depending upon where they're falling in the salary grid. Right, sure. And typically at the last two steps, you would have the biggest jump.
And this 0.82 person full-time proper staff increase in private insurance, sorry, I don't know, what was it again?
So that would be a real number.
Right.
That other portion of those two positions are located teaching positions. That is now, the reference is going to be for the department head.
This is
curriculum supervision.
That's right, it's department head, okay.
So those are existing positions that will be moved over to that account.
Yeah.
And then those will backfill the positions that they're leaving at a lower rate. And that would be the estimate.
Gotcha.
I just want to remind the people on the committee, if you could speak into the microphone, because sometimes it's hard to hear. Thanks. And the other thing is, that was Peter's question, but we all sort of endorse all the questions, so it's,
No, I'm sorry.
I know.
As I watch it,
I know.
I yell at my TV while I'm watching it.
No. Well,
Yelling in here.
No.
Explaining in the air.
we all support the questions that were being asked. We eliminated a few. Okay, so the next one is, are there any more questions about Darien High School, or that came up while you were listening? Okay with that? All right. Next, elementary schools. We appreciate that you did such a good job of telling the community why the psychologists were needed. I think, we wanted to have a lot more information, and you did provide it, so we appreciate that.
The sub-accounts, you can see there was a lot of conversation during the Board of Education about these substitute accounts, and there were changes made. They show an overall increase at this point of 1.12% when compared with the revised budget. I don't know if anyone else has, subs we handled for meetings, so, but if anyone else would like to know anything particular on them. There was also a question about the extracurricular activities, and the co-curricular organizations are those that do have a direct relationship, such as the math club. The extracurriculars are enrichment opportunities. Each school is offered a certain number. I think it's 4 at most, and they can choose to take advantage of that or not based on student interest. So some years you'll have schools that see 2, other years that have 3, but it's all driven by what the students in that particular population are interested in. And then, again, same thing, the student activities funds are not part of the district budget, and no stipends are paid out of them. There's no salary that comes out of student activity funds.
The salary's in the budget. The stipend is in the budget. Yes.
Nothing is paid out of those student activity accounts that would account for salary.
Any other comments about this? No? So now we're on to athletics.
Our other favorite conversation, and you can see we spend a lot of time on this, and certainly warranted, both from it as a budget driver and the number of participants that we have in it. We'll receive the comments with the deep dive you'd like deeper. The board has been asked to provide questions to me so that we can schedule another conversation on this, and we would invite all of your comments when we do that, and anything you have in advance, if you'd like to send to me as we put together an agenda on it, we're happy to receive. The board will kind of define the work of that day. I do think we did a lot of work that day. We spent 4.5, 5 hours, and I know at times it doesn't seem satisfying because you want to walk out of that meeting with all the answers, but just realize the 9 of us are spending 5 hours with a weighty, almost $1 million program to look at. So,
well, do you still have the questions we asked last year, or should we kind of resurrect them and add to them?
You could send me more. I think what we might find is that many of those questions, we may differ on whether we believe they were answered or not.
That's where.
And that may be where, like, we would invite you at public comment. I would invite kind of specifically what you don't think was handled. But sometimes you might find the lens you're looking at it slightly different than the lens we're looking at it. So that's fine. But if you have anything, then refresh it, because.
Or when are you going to have the meeting? And just to give us an idea of when we should.
So I'm going to discuss that with my board tomorrow night. I don't
Okay.
wanna get ahead of that.
No. Okay.
But tune in tomorrow.
Okay.
Or
So
come tomorrow, right?
I guess if we have new people here, since we put together those questions, so we would want a chance for the new folks to be able to chime in. And then, I just want to know should we get you this list of questions? But it'll probably be by June or something like that.
Our goal was spring, but the board will have to discuss it.
Okay. All right.
Can I just add, because you and I have had this conversation before. I know a lot of times you've said this is not, look, this is stuff that has to come from the administration, but at the same time, I think the board needs to direct the administration and say, hey, our parents are saying there's really no consistent athletic policy within teams, among all the teams, and I think that's what we're asking for, and I think that should be something the next superintendent looks into fairly quickly, because we can't keep asking the same question over and over again. It's like we're going in a circle constantly asking the same question. I do think it needs to become a priority for the next superintendent.
So, I think the board has made that clear as well. I do think there's a difference between operational concerns, which need to be run through the athletic director and the building principal, and policy concerns, which need to be run through the Board of Education. And I do think that that's something that's very difficult for parents, understandably, to work out. Sometimes it's difficult for the board. But the athletic director and the building principal need to own their program. And if they're, I know, you brought up a concern you had over safety equipment during the budget season, and while we are happy to receive it and make sure there's safety equipment, I would also say the coach, the athletic director, and the building principal have a responsibility to make sure there's no kid on the field that is not in safe equipment. And every parent should feel empowered to
agree, but I'm talking about just consistent policies about how teams determine captains. I mean, you can change from year to year within the same team. Yeah,
but so again, there is an administrative regulation on how captains are made. If there's a discrepancy in that needs to be run up through the athletic director and through the building principal. It's in writing. If you can request it in writing, it exists. And if you find a discrepancy with it, I would encourage you greatly to run it through your chain of command or communication.
One of the things that I think a committee like this is sort of good for is that we're a link to the community. And I think that if we can bring up questions like some of the ones here, it takes the burden off of a parent to have to go and stick their neck out and say, take the risk that their child's going to be treated badly or whatever, and by asking that question himself. So I guess what we're trying to do here is sort of show you what the community's concerned about, particularly, in the areas we ask questions about. And so sort of to think that, well, a parent should go up the chain of command, I'm not a parent of a kid in high school right now, but I have been, and it is very awkward for a parent to have to go to a coach or a principal and say, you know what, my child got a disease from the dirty mats used in wrestling, and then the kid will not be on the team or they won't get any time. I don't do wrestling, but it's that kind of thing that you're trying. Well, this was in the old era, but anyway, I'm just saying that's the kind of thing that I think this committee might try to help with, and that is there's no focus on a particular family saying, hey, my child isn't being treated well. It's the community concern saying, we're hearing a lot of stuff about athletics. People send some of our members letters and stuff. So the idea would be that it be looked at as a big picture rather than little Johnny didn't make the team and he went home and told mommy.
So I think there's two things, and I appreciate 100%, because we also, we're 9 years, but more years is always better. But what we do need to make sure is we're running the right pathways, because the Board of Education isn't going to know if the wrestling mats were clean that day. The superintendent, if someone doesn't want to go, or the principal, has to kind of own her building or own her schools and work with the operational things. Because quite frankly, the 9 of us do not have authority to run the school's operation.
No.
So that's the only thing. Teresa and I have had lots of we're longtime friends, have had lots of conversations about this. So I do think what would benefit us and would help us in terms of a mutual kind of relationship here, one, we like to hear and know what you find. But also, the more that we can direct people in the correct pathways, because often we get phone calls, my kid didn't make this team, or I feel like my kid didn't have the right X. That's informative to us, but there's very little we can do from a policy standpoint if we're not hearing it through the correct chain of command. And so parents really do have to work that chain of command, and or if there's a personal concern, either go to their building principal, and if they really feel like for some reason they can't, they need to talk to the superintendent. Because often we say, we need to direct you back to the right person. You know this from being on the Board of Education. We have to direct you back to the right person. We don't have dominion over this.
Right. Well, I guess, I don't know, something that I think about that I was told a long, long time ago, it's not the board's job to run the schools. You're right. But it is the board's job to see that the schools are well run. And I guess when you hear multiple complaints about athletics or whatever it is, that starts saying, it's kind of like when a person is so annoyed with a product that they write to the chairman of the board and say, something's wrong with my tomato. So, you know that there was the chain of command wasn't working because that person had to call the CEO and say, there's something wrong with your product.
So I think that's why you're seeing so many conversations, and when Teresa touched on earlier, certain things come up all the time. Right now, athletics seems to be one of those areas where the board is needing to spend a particular amount of time from exactly what you described. And so we recognize it and are committed to it.
Okay, very good. Another?
Controversy over who the athletic director reports to. It's the principal, right?
Yes.
And some people say it's not the principal, it's the superintendent. So what does a parent
He's
do?
technically an administrator. He's on
No,
the.
he's on, there's a reporting, and he's on it. He reports to his building principal.
He's in
What
here.
happens if the parent goes up the chain of command, which happens all the time, and that's when you get the complaint, because nothing happens and nothing changes. And I feel like this is a circle it's been the same problem for a few years.
So,
Can I just say,
Yeah.
there are a lot of problems that come up through
Yes.
the chain right to the superintendent. And the superintendent, the athletic director, the principal, the coach, the HR director are involved in dealing with those issues. The ones, I guess, that get to the board are the ones we can't resolve or don't hear about. But for the most part, we do resolve those issues. And, you know, like, for example, on the selection of captains, we've been involved with that for weeks now.
That's been going on for years.
For years.
I'm sorry?
The problem has been going on for years, and something was put in place, it wasn't, sometimes it's used, sometimes it's not used, so.
I think the procedure, as far as I can tell, this year, procedure's been very, very consistent. The athletic director oversees all of the work by the various teams and oversees the election and the election results to make sure it's done in a fair and equitable fashion. And I really do feel confident that it was done properly this year. But, you know, I agree with you. You know, it's an issue that I think, especially in Darien, where athletics are very, very important to the community, that it be looked at and reviewed by all of the administrators, including the superintendent, the building principal, the athletic director, and others.
so the only thing I'll add, you'll have a rather fuzzy copy in your packet, but if you go to your last page in your packet, we printed out a clean version and attached it.
That was the extra piece, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, here we go, yeah, okay.
And there's another handout in there. So I think most of what you put in here are all things that we've committed to talking about. We'll say the relationship between the Board of Education and the DAF, I saw some questions about also at your last meeting, and does the district apply for grants, does the DAF suggest? We do not go to the DAF and ask them if there's something we feel the district needs. We feel that that's something that belongs in our budget. The DAF has been incredibly generous and a very involved member of the community and has come forward with suggestions of projects. But we believe if the district thinks it needs to be done, then it should be in our budget book. If we have outside community organizations that would like to make an offer and like us to consider, much like the PTOs, we hear them, we consider them, and you'll see us. We've turned down gifts, we've accepted gifts, so it's an ongoing process. Again, overall strategy in place to cover cost is something that we continue to look at. Is the board's goal to have equity in what parents pay for athletics? Equity is an interesting word. I think you'll find that football costs more than soccer, so the question is it equitable? What you've seen the board talk about and where we came last summer, and there was an interest this budget season to continue, is that we provide all the safety equipment required for sport. So football requires helmets, pads, those sorts of things. Soccer, you could argue the shin guards, but that's a pretty personal issue. So you will see disparities in prices spent on different sports, but there has to be a recognition that just to effectuate a certain sport, there's going to be different prices. So where we came out is we would make sure that all of the necessary equipment is supplied for. There are students who choose to bring their own, especially in hockey, you'll find their own helmet or their own stick, as long as it is conforming with Darien High School's colors and that sort of thing. We have allowed that to happen. For the first time, we saw that in football this year. We started to see some people bring their own helmets. We felt that we had appropriate safety gear, 4-star rated, but there were some kids who had variant helmets. From 8th grade, they wanted to bring them to 9th grade. They were comfortable playing with them. We weren't going to with them. Bless you. So we make sure we have, for every player on the field, we make sure anyone who needs the equipment can ask for it and can request it.
When we were talking about equity, were we talking about, for the off-site sports, and I think this goes back to something I think Dennis and Krista brought up, that, everything is different, that we cover a certain percentage for each of those sports.
So the board heard that initiative in this budget season.
In this budget season, I know it got shut down this year, but is it something, I think it's something that maybe we should look into going forward, not this budget cycle, but going forward.
Well, as a concept, I think it's very interesting,
Yeah.
but how to make it proceed with it is difficult.
Because I agree, obviously every sport is going to cost something different based on its equipment and whatnot, but for people who are paying, for parents who are writing a $900 check to cover ice time, that's significant money. You know what I'm saying?
The only thing I can say for consideration on this budget, which currently have to bring forward to the RTM, the board voted that we were hiring
I know, that's
traditional
what I'm
agreements.
just saying.
Right.
Yeah. Well, interesting points were brought up at the Board of Ed's public hearing about, say, a field that has been there because the town has been generous and the various donors have donated to that field. I mean, that cost, do you consider that cost when you consider the cost of playing lacrosse? I mean, the ice hockey time is a separate thing because you have to pay separately for the ice time. But I guess, you don't look at a field as, well, who contributed to that and how do you divide that out among, what would it cost each lacrosse player if you charged them to use the field? I mean, nobody's going to do that, I know, but I'm just saying.
Part of it is what you have as a fixed asset,
Yeah,
or what you don't. So fixed assets are, we also don't apportion that to the gym time, to
No,
basketball,
no.
because we have a gym. It's
complicated.
complicated. So my best for our consideration at this moment, although as you can see from our board meetings, the board is digging deeper and deeper into all of this. So what you bring up, it's not that it's not important, but for your recommendation on this budget going forward, I just have to represent what the board has decided at the moment, is to maintain the traditional agreements.
Very good. Any other questions about athletics?
And the thought there, just so at least we're all starting on the same playing field as we go into conversations this spring, and I imagine they'll continue into the fall with the new superintendent, is that many of these sports, when the teams came, these were agreements that were made, will you offer this sport? And in terms of, yes, we'll offer this sport, this was the agreement made. There are conversations that say that was a long time ago, we should reopen it. So I can't re-legislate all of that, but as you go forward making it a recommendation to the RTM so that you understand what the recommendation is, at the moment, it is to honor the traditional agreements.
Thank you. I think that's, we can certainly understand that because we are aware that, or some of us are aware that when a team went from being a club to a varsity sport, the parents came in and said, we'll pay for it. And unfortunately, they're still paying for it. And there's a new generation of parents who maybe doesn't feel so good about that. And that's,
So there's no sport that's 100% paid by parents.
No, I know that. But I'm just saying there was a time when in order to make a sport a varsity sport, parents wanted that very badly. And there was also a time when sports might have been cut. And they said, we'll pay a fee. So it does start with good intentions, but that's what happens. When you talked about the DAF relationship and the grants, does the Board of Ed apply to the Darien Foundation for grants, or do they come to the Board of Ed and say, we have a wonderful idea?
I think generally, in recent history, I can only think of ones where they, the technology fund, which is now the community fund, asked what we would, if there was a need, and we spoke to it. And that's the only one I can think of where it's before it was brought, or an understanding of the curriculum, and hey, we understand you do this, can we help you with your labs? But there's not really a grant application process, I think, with the app, and there's only one that comes to mind that we might have gone forward with. Okay. But those were always tied to the actual curriculum.
Right. Okay, thank you.
There is one that works with Chris Manfredonia, and they work with the coaches, and the coaches say what they actually they need, and they submit that to them.
That's the Blue Wave Booster.
Oh, the Booster Club. Okay, all right.
Which isn't quite a club, but is.
Okay.
Sort of, yeah.
Did you want to move on to the next topic? You okay? All right.
I think we're good.
Security measures. We lay it out here very quickly. So we start with, we do our best not to discuss security. We understand that there is concern because you want to make sure our kids are secure. So our overall process is that we do file a plan each year with the state. Each school also has a security and safety committee. You'll see who is on that. It's listed 1 through 6. Each committee reviews and debriefs after the exercise. The plan that's signed up on a yearly basis includes the first selectman, the board chair, the health director, the police, and that is reviewed, signed off on, and sent to the state each year. In addition, we have made significant investments over the years to our schools to kind of change with the changing reality of what our schools are facing. There have been new cameras. We authorized the superintendent to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the police departments, and the police will now be able to access our cameras in real time if there's a need so that they can react immediately. We have implemented the blue light system, which locks down and it will lock down the school immediately. It allows messaging to go out to parents immediately, and it is an automated system that allows children to know what is going on. So let's say the blue light system is gone and someone pulls a fire alarm. The automated system will say a lockdown is going on, ignore the fire drill, this is a lockdown situation. So that was a significant change, investment. All the schools have it. Those buttons are located around schools. Staff was trained on how to use it. Whether we like it or not, children are in a situation where we drill them on lockdowns, and that is because of the world we live in, but then we deal with the challenges around that because that can be scary for students, especially young students, and we're aware of that. I think you saw the bollards put in. There was a concern that the courtyard of DHS was open in both Middlesex and Holmes, which had entryways that provided access directly to the schools. They put in what they call man traps, which allows people to first be in that space and vet before they are entered into the school, or they're allowed access into the school. So I think that what you will find is the schools, quite frankly, from Sandy Hook now, have gone through significant upgrades and changes. We definitely, if any parent has a concern at the building level, invite that parent to talk to their principal. The principal certainly can talk them through something more specific than we're doing here, but not so specific enough that there's information that we feel that could let children be in harm's way. And so that's really the medium that we're trying to strike with this. We're happy to talk about what you can see, and the parts you can't see for a reason. And so that's the only part that we ask kind of for respect on, because the reasons why you can't see it are all the reasons you wouldn't want the wrong people to see it.
Sheila, did you want
If I can, yeah, two questions. One is,
the microphone?
do we have was a consultant hired ever to discuss these things, whether we are performing the best practices in this regard?
So every year the police department, we work with the police department, they review our schools, an outside security consultant has not been hired, but the police department issues a report on each building each year into the vulnerabilities and or areas that they see.
If I could, the state of Connecticut has adopted guidelines for every Board of Education in the state to follow through with. So they have all of the guidelines that we have to have into our plan, and we abide by that.
Second, did the Board of Education ever consider having a school security officer at each school? And I don't know if it goes outside what we want to discuss here or not, but...
No, so at this time, it has neither, the question has come up. I've talked with 2 superintendents on it and the police chief, and at this time, neither superintendent, Dr. Brenner or Dr. Landon, nor the police chief recommended at our elementary schools. Where it was recommended for was the addition of our middle school. You will see it in the first selectman's budget. She's been very supportive of it, and we appreciate that. But as a board, we really can only go off the recommendations of our experts, and both our educational experts and our security experts are not recommending at this time SROs at the elementary schools.
So it'll be at middle school and high school.
Yes, but what you should know is there is a police liaison that is attached to every elementary school. And so that policeman walks the building, that policeman is often in the parking lot, that policeman is invited in to meet the children so that he is a familiar face. He does not have the same role as an SRO. However, I know, I think last time my guys were there, Officer Scombros was assigned to Oxbridge. Don't hold me to that, they might have changed it. But he made every effort he could to both walk the building, let the kids know that he was a friendly community officer, be in the parking lot at key times, and then kind of random times when people wouldn't expect. So it is not an SRO, but there is a police liaison assigned to each school.
In addition to a security marshal.
In addition to,
And
we
some
have
are
someone at the
ex-
front door who is trained in security measures at each
Yep,
other.
yep.
Yes, first, I'm so impressed with this blue light system. I had no idea anything like that was there. Is part of the plan how everyone reacts when the danger is outside, especially elementary school where there would be many children outside most of the day?
So there were speakers at the elementary schools?
Yes,
Okay, so there are now speakers on the outside of all the buildings that allow for announcements to be made if kids are outside, to tell a teacher, do not enter back into the building. And so, God forbid, those students could move away to safety. There are agreed upon meeting places for those students to go to that are not disclosed to the public. And so I do think that we have, at the high school too, because you have kids who eat lunch, and, they'll be outside, and that was a concern. But yes, at this point, there are speakers at all of the schools.
So Tara, as part of the drills that the kids go through, I guess at all levels, they are aware of that. Like you may be outside, there may be a speaker that tells you to go, and your teacher will tell you
Yes,
where to go.
they are now drilled several times a year.
Okay, so if
Both
any,
on what we might be used to as kids and now these lockdowns.
right, so if
And there are
any of these
different drills.
different scenarios
Different
go
kinds of
forward,
drills.
they've been through them. They know it.
As
Okay.
much as we can prepare them.
I know. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the next subject. It looks like pretty, the technology, right?
Yep.
What's it cost?
Our maintenance costs are handled in district, so there's no additional cost for that. The cost for each iPad is $450. If iPads or Chromebooks are damaged, families are responsible for that. We've actually seen fairly good results. They're holding up, they're sturdy. There are slips. Trust me, there are some families who have to deal with broken iPads even with Board of Education. But for the most part, I think everyone has reported to us that the rollout and the year-over-year implementation is working as planned.
The next question relating, is that okay with the technology? Any more questions? The next one relating to the FOI log. I think
At
it's
the moment,
answered.
it is public. If anyone would like to see it, you just need to send an email into the superintendent's schools, but it's a public document.
RC 19?
Okay, so we watched this one too. This one threw us a bit, because there was a question about, and I believe what it was trying to make sure is we weren't administrative heavy. And that we're making sure people were interfacing with children. And so as part of this, we broke it down. I think part of the question was that there were 16 FTEs as curricular instructors. Part of that, for example, is your athletic director and assistant athletic director are in there. Your SRBI specialists are in there. So these are forward-facing people with our children. You can see the breakdown of them. We've also laid it out here. I don't know that you want me to read it all, but there's 2 elementary program directors. I think you've seen them before if you've come to our meetings. We've got Linda, can I pull Linda's last name out? Yep. And Corey Gillette. Then we have our assistant superintendent of schools, as we've met, and 12.5 instructional support specialists. They are working directly with children. These staff members provide direct service under SRBI as well as coaching and support for our classrooms teachers. SRBI is a program that for kids who you're trying to kind of catch a learning gap. And so those really are your people kind of intervening and working one-on-one with kids. We've heard nothing but great things from our SRBI program, and credit to Dr. De Silva for really building that program up. It breaks it all down here. I mean, I can read it, but if anyone has questions, it breaks it down who each of these people are. But there were not, and this is where, feel free to clarify, there are not 33 people overseeing curriculum. That was confusing to us in your question.
So, yeah, it was, and we tried to clarify it in the question, right? If you do the RC 19, the 16.75 personnel, and you have page 100, which is basically curriculum supervision in those schools, right? Together we have 33 people. And
Could you use the microphone? Just because
yes,
people up at
yes,
this
I'm happy
end-
to use the microphone. Yeah. So again, it's page 76 and page 100, right? If you add them, so I guess that's where the numbers come from. And the question is really, and I'm looking now at page 14 of the budget book. I'm just trying to understand, and maybe that's a conversation doesn't belong here. Although these two pages together are $5 million of our $100 million budget, so it's significant. But how does the reporting works, right? I mean, we have here a person for music director who is right underneath assistant superintendent, but then I assume there's music teachers in the particular RCs, right, in particular schools. So what does this person do? Has it always been like this?
Yeah, so part of it is we have over 1,000 students, let's say, who just participate in chorus.
Yeah.
So as part of that, I mean, our music is huge, right? That doesn't take into account band or jazz ensemble or anything else like that. So it really is a department head. Rick Sadlon's been around for a while. He is with kids a lot. He is at all the concerts. He is taking kids on music trips. So I do think part of that might just be a familiarity with the program, that the committee can talk internally. If we can help on it.
And Rick is in that curriculum budget. He is in that 20, the RC 20, correct?
I'm sorry.
He is as director of music. He is in that RC 20, right, or RC 19. That's what we're trying to figure out.
It's in music, isn't it?
Or RC 19. I just want to make sure I understand what these people do.
He does.
He's split.
He does.
Yes, right?
Yes.
He's split.
Well, so he is, he's part teacher, part supervisor.
Yeah.
So he's 0.73 as teacher and 0.3 as,
So of these 12.75, there are some that are, it's basically more
Those
people.
12.75, those individuals are direct service to children. They are our SRBI specialists, as Ms. Ackerman mentioned. So those individuals provide direct service.
Yeah.
They're not running the curriculum.
A couple of others too.
But to clarify, the music director is on page 55 in RC 13. Pardon me? Yeah, okay.
So I got you. So the 12.75 is the SRBI. Those are teachers. The teacher. Okay, got it. And out of the page 100, who are the supervision, curriculum supervision people at the particular schools?
Include the athletic director.
Mm-hmm.
Our department chairs, we also have, our special education department chairs, who also have direct service kind of children. Includes the assistant athletic director, so those individuals have different roles within the district. Some are supporting IEPs and families, others may be providing direct services, and others may be working on their own curriculum within that domain.
Can I ask an odd question? Why are there salaries for the athletic director in the curriculum budget?
Because part of,
Can you not hear me? I'm sorry.
it's not in the curriculum budget. So
Okay.
in the back of the book, what the white pages will do is curriculum supervision, we use accounting codes in order to group individuals up into different sections. So what this is doing is it's pulling all of the curriculum labeled object codes that start with an OG1
Okay,
tier.
thank you for, okay, I see what you're saying.
So they're the object, as I said, the object
No,
codes
I
in more
just was
detail.
thinking it was in the curriculum budget, I thought.
No,
But
but it's on
rolling
page,
up all of the curriculum to the
Understand.
it's on page 44.
Got it, okay,
In
thank
the-
you.
Okay. Are we okay here, or?
One more question, does the department has, they teach as well, or do they not?
So within this budget, there's a change. The current time, they have been teaching one class. However, as we talked about, it was one of the major budget initiatives this year, that we were finding that that was not actually benefiting their students, because often when their students needed to access them as a teacher, they had administrative duties. And so we have now made them full administrators in their supervisory roles. However, they will be in classrooms regularly, coaching teachers. We talked about this a lot at the Board of Finance, I think we spent a good 20 minutes on it, that this was really, really providing a benefit to our students. But as teachers, the students weren't getting the same access to teachers that other students might get. And so we didn't feel that was fair to students.
We okay? Okay. When you have the new psychologists, you know, the staff, will it be very clear who they report to? Because sometimes, I don't know, it seems like people have complained that they don't know who they're reporting to. So when everybody's sort of on staff and all set, will there be sort of clarity as far as, do they work for the building principal? Do they work for who do they work for?
Yes, everyone should know who they were.
Well, that's what I would have thought that too, but I know, they should check some other things too. But anyway, okay, well, then we're going to move on to finance, and these questions are pretty well answered right here, but you want to go over this?
I think that we can talk about a lot. As a board, we've indicated that will probably be part of our goals and discussions. The only thing I would mention about OpenGov is, what OpenGov is it's a vessel, right? It's how you populate OpenGov that gives you your free pie chart or graph or however you like to see it. And so that can be of value, and the board will discuss whether we think it is. But what will be going in is everything in here. So this is really still where all your information is. But I do think that it can be a very powerful tool, and the board is willing to look at it, understand what costs might be associated with it, understand what work orders might need to go along with it. And the only thing I would tell you is, you know, if we put in 2 RCs in this, you could make pretty pictures on 2 RCs. And you put in the whole book. So it's what you put into it is what you get out. It's really a user-friendly issue more than a transparency issue. And that would be the only thing. Sometimes I think the word transparency is getting thrown around, and what it really means is a user-friendly. And so in terms of that goal, to be as user-friendly as we can, the board is certainly willing to discuss it as maybe a worthwhile tool. But I don't want to get ahead of our conversation on that. That'll come during our goals and objectives, because it will inform the work that Mr. Feeney needs to engage on next year.
Any other questions?
No, my only point is, you know, we brought it here because when we were state of the town meeting, right, we heard John Zagrodzky talking about it, and we feel like we're all working on the same goal. We're one town.
Yes.
And, you know, we're just surprised that this cannot be discussed actually. Why does it have to be discussed even, right? With everybody, it seems like something is not, communication is not working between John and Mike, or maybe it is, I don't know, but, you know.
No, so part
just
of it is,
confused
to
why.
switch over to, so part of it is the way the budgets work.
Yeah.
In the sense that we appropriate, the town gives us an appropriation, we use it. Outside of that, this has costs associated with it that the board has
right.
never approved.
Right.
So I think we have a very good relationship with the Board of Finance.
Great.
It caught us by surprise that Mr. Zagrodzky announced it there. We would have been happy to have that conversation. I take it to mean that Mr. Zagrodzky did it with the best of intentions,
Sure.
and certainly not meaning to surprise us. I do think we're all working on one goal. It did catch us by surprise in that meeting. It comes up during goals and objectives because it informs how our staff does their time. And so during our goals and objectives, we decide that this is something we'd like to spend money on. It will tell us, quite frankly, at the business and finance office, It's a lot of work.
Yes.
And I think even the town is finding that not all their information is up, and they're working to get all of their information up. It's a lofty goal, and I think as Kate Bush has reported out in the beginning, it takes a little while to get going on it. So we just have to make sure that we are giving our business, we have to look at what it is, how much it will cost for us to do it, and what we're getting out of it. But certainly there has been enough interest in it from outside that we're more than willing to look at it.
I guess you also have to consider the cost in terms of time,
Yeah.
because it's not your main goal to be setting up programs for OpenGov. It's, you have other goals, so, whereas.
We're not opposed to it
No,
either.
no, no,
That's
but
maybe
I-
somehow where the message got missed, that in some way we were opposed to it. We weren't.
No.
We hadn't looked at it, but I agree with
But
you.
the
There's-
time commitment is
there's a
huge.
time commitment,
Yeah.
There's a business commitment, and there's a financial commitment.
Yeah. Okay, the summer school question, I think, has been answered here. There's, you pay for the class, right? I mean, there's no, okay.
There's one of the questions last week, and I'm not sure what the answer is. Do special ed kids pay for ESY, or is that included? That just included?
That was part of their education.
Part of their education.
Of the
or
plan.
is still-
That's what we thought, yeah.
I just wanted to confirm that, that's what we thought. But,
Do you want to go on to RC 24?
Sure.
Are we okay?
This is about building programs. We've talked about this a lot over the last 2 or 3 years. Here we list for you some of the programs we have built in-house. And so the answer is yes. Yes, we are. DLC has been built. There's been a restructuring of the AIM program at MMS, comprehensive class restructuring at DHS. Also, we've included more co-teaching and team teaching. And if you look at DHS, Fitch Academy is a perfect example of that. We saw a need, we built a program, we funded it. I think some people were able to join us on the tour last week and see kind of the benefits of it and how great it's going there. So the short answer is yes. Here, there are some examples. I also, and you'll see it later, I would urge you to go back and look at the November 27th, 2018 Board of Education meeting. Mrs. Klein talked a lot about what they've done to build inside the program. What is driving outplacement costs? And how has this changed? So these are very specific. What drives outplacement is incredibly specific. It is directly related to the child, the agreements made in the PPTs, so that children can access their education in the least restrictive environments. So I think that it is, here's the overarching idea. You can say a child is X or has X ability, disability, or learning difference, but the child is not X. So if you were to say, I've identified 10 kids with dyslexia, the child is not dyslexic. The child may have dyslexia, but they also might have dysgraphia. They also might have a behavioral issue. They also might have something else. So just identifying or kind of calling a child by one disability category doesn't actually tell you that you can build a program in and of itself. It also doesn't tell you who that child is. Because a child who has dyslexia and behavioral issue might be eligible for an outplacement. We might have that child better educated here. And if they are eligible for a placement, they might not be eligible for the same placement that someone with dyslexia and dysgraphia have. So I think we have to be careful. We have to label children because we have to categorize them. But I do think we need to be careful when we're talking about it because the child is not the disability. So saying, well, I know there's 15 kids with dyslexia, it doesn't tell you necessarily all you need to know about what those child's educational needs are. So that's going to be overarching as we go through this. And that's where the IEPs and the PPTs become so important because we have to meet the child's individual educational plan, hence the IEP. And part of that goes to what is the outplacement cost per child over time. That varies greatly. It varies significantly based on need. You could have a child who needs to attend a school that's $500,000, and you could have a child who attends a school that's $80,000. They both need to be outplaced. They both have needs. We do talk about how we analyze and that we go into it. Are there patterns of need the district is not meeting? I think Mrs. Klein spoke to this again in our updates over the last 2 years, that no, we believe we are meeting our needs, and we recognize when there are needs that are best served for the student, and sometimes, quite frankly, cost-wise, also best served for the student out of the district. It is not always cheaper to educate a child in district. We do our best to work with parents, and by we, the Board of Education is not involved in PPTs or IEP writing, but we have faith in our administration, and as they explain to us, they do the best to meet the needs of the child. Sometimes that's in district, sometimes that's out. Could the district-wide programs be formed to address the needs of students who are currently outplaced? I think, as we have stated, we continue to assess the needs. Any chance we can to meet a child's needs if the parents believe they need to be in district, and so we meet. It's not possible in all cases. And so that's kind of the reality of which we are in. You'll see over the past 2 years, we've implemented scientifically research-based multi-sensory reading instruction in general education, special education, to address the needs of reading disabilities. We talked a little bit about some of our behavioral programs earlier. Could unique programs be formed with nearby districts? Yes, you'll see that a little bit in our shared services question later. Where we can share services with other districts, we do. Where we can develop new programs, we do, such as Fitch. We continue to explore with neighboring districts where we need to do and what we can do together. Stanford has a great continuing ed program for students over 18 that are still our responsibility. That's always an ongoing conversation. And hopefully with Fitch, we'll find people for whom are interested in that. What is tuition in public and private schools that students in Darien attend? So that varies greatly. And if you go to the presentation, November 27th, you'll also see a list of schools that are state approved. I think there's 15 to 17 that are state approved, and I mean, you can see the swings in tuition. We don't set those tuition. We send students where they can, do their best to access a free public education.
Sorry, can I just
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'll just ask you a quick question. With Fitch and working with other towns, can the facility that they're currently at handle out-of-district kids? Is there room to build that program out like that?
We can take more children. I feel like we have grown rapidly. 12 children last year to 26.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure at the moment if our staff would want to go much bigger. I mean, we do have to realize we're in year 2.
Right.
Right. Dr. Brenner didn't want to go more than 36, right, ever?
30.
30?
Is what the board was told.
Yeah.
And so what we found is we were told there was a need for Fitch. And they were right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We keep talking about other towns potentially using Fitch. Is it even a possibility? Because we have so many kids of our own using it, and we have a facility that has just so much space.
It is a possibility, but this program was never intended to be 100 kids.
Right.
Right.
So are we looking to take 20 kids in? No.
And New
But
Canaan
we're
has built
also
their
not
own.
taking 20 kids out. I think as we go down, you'll see some of the specific shared services we have. So this isn't the only ways in which schools have been doing shared services. Schools have been doing this longer than most public organizations have been sharing services because of the uniqueness of kids and trying to access their needs. But no, Fitch should not be seen as the panacea. We're taking in so many kids, and we're never going to have to sit and have another budget meeting again. That's not the case. But we are finding kids who are coming back. I should say coming back if their situation is being re-looked at. We are finding parents who are finding Fitch an acceptable placement for their child. That's encouraging. As much as families can be together in the same town, that's a win. And Fitch has provided that. So, is there room? Yes. Are we taking in a busload of kids to Fitch? No.
I have to leave. I just got a message from my son, please.
Oh, goodness, I hope it's...
Oh, I'm sorry. You okay?
Hope he's better.
Yeah, I do too. Do you need anything? Babysitter, right?
Okay, are there any other questions about this? You okay? All right.
Unilateral outplacement, I watched this conversation, so part of that was explaining unilateral placement to the whole committee. You'll see there, Darien Public Schools complies with the State Department of Education. This allows districts and families the right to engage in due process hearing and mediation, but at no time in this process is the Darien schools saying they didn't believe they could provide an appropriate placement. It ends up being a situation where there is an agreement given the situation. When you're talking about a unilateral placement, a parent has made that choice. And then it's come back to the district on a conversation. And at some point, if there's a mediation or a settlement, that's a contractually binding settlement. Does that make sense?
Is that, whoever had, I don't know where the questions came from, originally.
6 special education secretaries. The short answer on this is yes. We talked about it at the Board of Education meeting in our budget discussions. I think Mr. Deneen, it's one of his questions. We looked at it. Part of it is maybe an understanding of the word secretary or how it's being used. We have people who look at our highly stylized excess cost reimbursement grant. They deal with that all day long. They're not answering phones. They're not, and so I think we have to understand these are people who are working in highly specialized fields. They would fall part of the secretarial union, so that's why they have that name attached. Not putting down anyone who's answering phones. We also need phones answered because parents call a lot, and we want to be there for them. But I do think they're part of that grouping, which is why they have that name. And we list some of the responsibilities they have there. But the board did ask this question presently in administration, and that all sits.
Just, can I stop on that? More generally about secretaries 107, and I know Mr. Deneen was in.
Could you use the micro?
Yeah,
Chris?
sorry.
Can't hear you.
Is there some metric you guys follow? And I know, that, as you said, the job descriptions are different from what we call secretary to secretary. But if you look at, for example, middle school has 20 employees per secretary. Special ed has 35 employees per secretary. High school has 32 employees per secretary. Is there some metric, that we focus on? Because obviously, time gets filled with work if somebody's working, right? So we just want to make sure you guys looking at it and the administration is looking at it and maybe perhaps employing some of these metrics that I just mentioned. I don't know if it's per employee, is it per hour worked, I don't know.
So we do look at it. We look at the need. You'll see about 2 years ago there were major switches in who was where and why they were there. As part of that, there were some positions that we found were no longer necessary. And staff was reallocated, or there were some jobs that were no longer necessary. But you will look at, like, the athletic director has a secretary. Well, there's no athletics at the middle school, so that job is not needed there. It's looked at by need. In special education in particular, it is a highly stylized process with contractual agreement, making sure IEPs are written the correct way, making sure money is encumbered the correct way, making sure we're applying for state grants the right way. So I believe it was in our Saturday meeting, we had a full discussion on this, and Mrs. Klein talked to us about what each did, and we felt that this point of staffing was appropriate.
Right.
Fixed expenses.
Any others? I just want to make sure, are we done with special ed? Okay, yes.
Fixed expenses, we tried to clarify, we put some more information there. Is there any specific question on that?
That's good. Yep. That takes care of.
All good.
General suggestions, you talked about what do we do to promote shared services. So we have this conversation with the Board of Finance. Again, it goes back to school. We've been doing this for a long time. So we have consortiums for buying, the Connecticut Regional Educational Consortium and the State of Connecticut Purchasing Coalition. And the cooperative purchasing agreement We share continuing education services with Stanford. We have a partnership with YMCA for our facilities. We do share, I think to be most accurate today, we are not, but that could change tomorrow. We do share buses for students who are going up to certain schools. If we can share with the town and pick someone up in Wilton or Norwalk, we have done that in the past. And we look to do that and talk to districts as much as we can of where we could share buses. We do send kids out to various schools, CES, BOAG, and magnet schools, which we talked a little bit about. In transportation, so that's what I touched upon, especially CES. That's a great way sometimes to capture economies of scale with transportation. In the past, we've shared agreements with Newtown, Wilson, Norwalk, and Stanford. Like I said, we don't have one in place today because students need to access that, and those towns do. We have a long-standing relationship to be able to do that with those towns.
There was a question, I think when we were talking about shared services, and I don't know, maybe it didn't make it all the way into here, would you ever cooperate with another town in, say, writing curriculum? I mean, is New Canaan kind of, do they have a curriculum person who's working on the same stuff that the people here are doing? And might there be something shared that way? I was wondering also if one of the organizations like CES, where they have seminars or whatever to, to provide services, in service teaching to teachers, is that a type of sharing of curriculum?
So there's a lot of professional sharing, and that's actually a great point. I'm glad you made it. CAPS with the superintendents, they're sharing. Professional development, certainly. There's shared experiences, sharing what's going on, sharing what's working in one school or not. I think, I know there's a couple different groups that meet. Susie, you meet?
Sure. I think there are different opportunities. We have gone to other communities for professional development, and they have offered and shared those expenses. We did that actually our first year here with some OG training. Similarly, other teachers or staff have come here to observe in our classrooms. The reality is around curriculum initiatives, while we do share documents and resources, each community does have different structures. And so while we might allocate a particular amount of time for particular curriculum, other communities may not allocate that same amount of time. And so units have to be different based on your community and your set of values and your own structures. But there are a significant amount of shared resources within CES and within Columbia and things like that we do collaborate on. I'm not sure that we would be sharing expenses other than outside
No, I wasn't thinking of expenses, but I was just thinking in terms of, say, an AP course, it's the same no matter where you're taking it. So, I mean, there have been programs for teachers to share that, or even say the tri-state or an accrediting team comes in. That's, there are people from other towns who come in to work on that. So that is also, it might.
A lot of professional sharing.
Yeah,
and I think some of the conversations at the state level where you saw boards of ed saying to the legislature, hey, come talk to us.
Yeah.
If you're going to go out and share services, come talk to us, because we've been doing it for a long time, both with professional services and financial services. And transportation is good, or kind of our consortium buying. We're doing it on papers and pens and sending things to school and with our professionals. So.
Well, I mean, even for the people in the town here who ask about, more shared services, I would think that you could bring up the fact that, there are all these professional services that you do share through some of these consortiums, so it'll be something to bring up. How are we doing?
I think we're doing.
Anything else?
Looks like we're doing.
The last page? We made it to the last page.
We made it to the last page. No.
So the short answer, Dr. Williams can jump in here, but the superintendent's the CEO of schools. So, no, what's brought to the budget is what the administration believes is a priority for the schools. And if what we were to start to do is to try to get into the, well, why'd you say no to this? We think this. I do think what we're doing is we're not letting the CEO of the schools operate. At some point, there is an educational professional that is running these schools. We need to vet the priorities that they've set, and as part of a vision and a plan, we need to understand why it's there. But if we were to start to get into the, well, you said no to this and this, let me see it, I really do think we're starting to merge the roles. And that's not really our role. We hire and we supervise our CEO, and we respect that what's brought forward is what he thinks is in the best educational need of the district.
Well, I guess I was thinking more in terms of, when you all talked about the psychologists, and you said this is the first time we've heard it. I guess I was so shocked. I mean, that was something I won't forget. And I thought, well, it's too bad that you didn't know about that last year, when maybe you could have prioritized that. Did you really need that assistant athletic director when kids are harming themselves? The people who made those reports are mandated reporters. The Board of Ed should have known that kids were hurting themselves and afraid to get out of their mother's car. I mean, I guess that's the kind of thing I was thinking, well, if you did like the capital budget where, you can see the things in the pipeline, would that be useful? I don't know. You don't have to answer.
I would characterize it differently.
Okay.
Certainly the board was surprised, but what caught us was there were parents who stood up, who said, we've been hearing about this for 3 years. And our answer to them is, we can act on what's brought before us. That has not been brought before us. I think you're recognizing we're in a leadership change, right? And part of that is whoever is setting the goals and the vision, and you'll see the board over the next year or so really setting strategic visions. But it is very different sometimes when a parent gets up and says, well, I've been hearing about this for 3 years. You don't want to minimize that. But also, what you need to hear from your administration is, we see there's a need. We feel this is now met a threshold. We need to invest significant taxpayer dollars in this because there's an educational need. And it may have been that prior to that, the educational need could not be quantified yet. And we see that often with projects of parents like, well, I want this to happen. But in the wheels of education, you may want that to happen, but you need to see the need for the most children and the need to invest in it. And so that was surprising for us to have that comment made to us. But I think what the board was really saying there is, we will act when we have sufficient information that is well backed up, that we can go out and we can defend. And so I think that to undermine and say, well, what are the things you said no to?
Well, but then what's the rationale for letting the capital budget be done with priority 2 and priority 3? You're seeing that. Is the same rationale in effect to say, well, why did you say no to that, that thing that's a priority 2? You know what I'm saying?
No, because Mr. Lynch can explain why it's priority 2. Often what he'll say is, what I can't do at this point, I know I'm not going to be able to get into that school. Or the roof is a priority 3 4 years out because its warranty isn't up for another 4 years. So I think it's a little bit different than when you're looking at educational initiatives versus just like in your own home, you can plan for what repairs you might need in your house. You can't always plan for what your kids are going through. FIT is something that I think we all at first struggled with because it came so fast. The need seemed to come so fast. But what we found is it was there. And so we addressed it. It's not like saying a roof. It's not like saying there's a ventilation project I know it's coming, the useful life on something is X and we're approaching it. So I think the way we're doing it is probably, again, as you know, that has not been the way the board works. And I think what you would be doing is in some ways pushing into the CEO's authority to prioritize his staff and his administration.
And I think what I've seen anyway, is when you are presenting, or the administration is presenting, we want a new math program, and so it's going to cost us this year, this next year, this the third year. That's the kind of thing that I've seen, the planning of expenses over years. But I agree that you can't, when you don't know a situation or you have not been made aware of yet of a situation, you can't do that, and that would be Dr. Landon's job. Yeah.
Dr. Landon's done a great job bringing forward and really assessing the needs of our kids, I think. Sorry, I'm putting in a plug for you, but I think he's really done a great job at coming in with a great depth and level of experience and addressing needs and making sure that they were put forward on the table. And so we're appreciative of that.
Any other questions? Did you have
Just a comment. I want to give a shout out to the Board of Ed members who are here tonight and continue to come. And the school, that one, who come to everything, and who've given us a lot of support and a lot of guidance on us, the questions for us to ask you, so we can answer for the public.
Well, thank
And
you.
it's been a
The
really,
people
it's,
sitting behind me make me look good.
they
and
do.
a lot of work. They do a
But it's
lot
been a
of
good
work.
year, and I want to thank you, really, because I know it's an effort.
And they
And
really
the
answer questions.
administrator as well.
They
Everybody,
put in their time.
it feels like a good team this year,
a
so
great team.
let's go do it.
Very lucky to work.
Is that it?
Can I ask one more
Well,
question?
okay,
Sorry.
of course.
One last question. And it was mentioned here in our last meeting here at the committee that perhaps some of the benefits estimates have changed, and therefore maybe the ask is not 100,687, but maybe it's lower. Could you please clarify that for us?
So our health insurance savings were about $500,000. They always come in around this time of the year. So our budget increase at this point is 2.03% over last year.
Thank you. That's great.
Last one was, I'm sorry, the last one was a question about budget books. Our budget is always online, so if people don't want to keep a copy, we're happy to do it digital. That's not dictated by us, that's always been dictated by requests from the RTM. So if anyone finds it more useful, it is all uploaded online. You can, if you don't want a budget book, all you need to do is let us know and we will run it.
Well, I thought maybe, if you had a couple at the library or something, if somebody wants to hold, have a paper
think that's a
copy.
good idea.
They have a chance to get
They
it.
can hold it,
versus
touch it.
having, everything online and,
There's always some in Donna's office.
Yeah, that's true.
There's always one at central office.
That's
There's
true.
always one at Donna's office. We're happy to give what we would just need direction from you. We print as many as we can so that everyone feels they have the information, but we put it online specifically for that reason. It's a lot cheaper.
yeah, it is, I don't
It's a
know how
lot of
much it
paper.
costs. I mean, that
And then
might
it
be a
keeps coming.
consideration, how much
So we would take
original
our
one
direction
has-
from the RTM on how many copies they'd like.
Okay.
And if they're
Good
fewer,
idea. Yay.
I think I told CDSP no to some this year. There was a request for more.
Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to talk to the Board of Ed about? We have a good chance here. They came out. I think this is a very good attendance. I really appreciate the time you're all spending, especially because you have to get up tomorrow morning and be with the kids, and that's what you're here for. So I really think it's great that you all came, and I think it was very helpful, right? Okay. So thank you all very much.
Very much.
Move to adjourn.
Do you want to adjourn?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you want to have any other discussion? I mean, they can go, but
I'm going to go take
you're going to go? Okay.
What more is there?
Well, I was just going to say, the next meeting,
It wasn't on our agenda, so.
I was just going to say the next meeting is May 6th.
May 6th.
So and that will be when we talk about our vote and put together our little talk that we're going to do at the RTM, okay? Is that all right with you?
Sorry.
Can't hear, sorry. I was going to, thank you for coming.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Bye. The next meeting for this committee is May 6th, unless you think we should meet at some time before that or another time, if that's a bad day for you or something. But on the schedule, we have it as May 6th. It'll be in this room at 7:30. Okay? I know there sometimes conflicts with the Rules Committee, so if people have a problem with that, let me know and we'll make a change, okay?
Yeah, we don't know yet.
Any other business? Okay, Sarah, I think we'll say we adjourned we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I wrote that down.
You wrote that
Thank you.
down?
Yes, I did, got it.
Okay.
Thank you. And I know we